recording.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Chase Allis, Professional Development and Outreach Specialist at ACRL. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar offered as part of ACRL's Together Wherever virtual event. Our goal for these webinars is to bring our colleagues together to discuss ways to best meet the needs of the library community during this uncertain time and beyond. We appreciate you being with us today. If you like, feel free to pop a brief introduction of yourself and say hello in the chat box today while I go over a few reminders. I'll also be here to monitor the chat and moderate the questions at the end of the session for presenters. As previously mentioned, today's session is being recorded. We'll post a link to the recording in the ACRL Together Wherever website. The ALA Statement of Appropriate Conduct applies to all ACRL events, including virtual, and we encourage respectful discourse on Twitter using the hashtag ACRLTogether2020. Today's presentation will be 1 hour in length, and we'll leave the Zoom room open for an additional 20 minutes after the presentation for optional additional networking and questions. When you choose to depart today's session, you'll see a brief evaluation, and we greatly appreciate your thoughts and feedback. Thank you in advance. And I'd also like to encourage you to visit the Together Wherever space on ALA Connect, where you can continue to ask questions, unpack ideas, and keep the discussion going. Today's webcast is Supporting Diversity in Campus Communities with Drag Queen Story Hour. I'd like to thank our presenters, Maria Atalano, Alora Bauer, Sarah Riando, and Bill Stevens, also known in drag as Celeste Covington, for being with us today. Presenters, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Hi, hello everyone. Hello, good afternoon. I am so delighted to be here. My name is Bill Stevens. I am the Youth Services Provider of the Early Childhood Outreach Team at St. Louis Public Library, which means that ultimately I'm an emissary from St. Louis Public Library here today. So thank you for having me, rather from the Public Library Association. There we go. So supporting diversity in campus communities with Drag Queen Story Hour. Right, kind of a big, heavy thing. So if we might get the next slide, Miss Maria. What exactly is Drag Queen Story Time, right? Like, what does this mean? Well, first and foremost, Drag Queen Story Time and Drag Queen Story Hour, which are two separate entities, is not just reading books. Like, you know, sure, in the program, it is just reading books, but it's reading books built on a platform and built on a foundation that extends all the way back through the LGBT rights movement in the United States. So very briefly, Drag Queen Story Hour, what's the tea? Drag Queen Story Hour originated in San Francisco circa 2015 by the author and activist Michelle T. And Drag Queen Story Hour acts as a national organization with over 35 US and 5 international chapters. I believe as of 2017, to cite my sources. So that's Drag Queen Story Hour. That's the institution. Drag Queen Story Time is the movement, the program itself. So, like, why does it matter? Like, what's the value in having drag queens, men, you know, in drag reading to children? Like, what's the point? Well, in order to answer that, we have to go a little back, right? So 2015, Drag Queen Story Time begins. But if we go further back into gay culture, you see that we've had the Miss Gay America pageant system since before 1973, and actually Missouri's had the Miss Gay Missouri America pageant since 1974. And on the screen now, to the right, you'll see the inaugural Miss Gay Missouri America, Julie Tomorrow. So we can trace it back at least as far as 1974. Well, drag's a little older than that, so let's trace it a wee bit further to October 31st, 1969, a very big year for the LGBT community. October 31st, 1969, several plainclothes officers of the Vice Squad of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department arrested 9 drag queens outside of the Onyx Room, which you can see in that left photo there. It would be on the left-hand side of the photo, due to masquerade laws. And that event boosted several local organizations into into advocacy and actually changing the legislation of not just the city, but the state, and getting those masquerade laws repealed. So drag is incredibly important to the LGBT community and the LGBT identity, and it's very much a cornerstone. So that's the history of drag. Why does it matter in a modern public library, right? Like, what's going on there? Well, if we accept that libraries are temples of information and culture, and that public libraries inherently pursue the same, the goal of preservation of minority cultural identities, then really drag queen story time, anything to do with drag, and the public library inherently pursue the same goal. So it does work out quite hand in hand. Miss Maria, might I get the next slide? So let me give you some fast facts about St. Louis Public Library and how we've done Drag Queen Storytime as a public library. We first held our Drag Queen Storytime in June 2017, where there was about 250 in attendance. That is a photo from that event, the inaugural Drag Queen Storytime. You will notice that everyone except for myself is wearing a hat. I will point out, unbeknownst to you based on the photo, that I was reading a book about Hooray for Hats. So, plan ahead. Since then, we've had a total of 6 Drag Queen Story Times for a total of attendance of 1,000, which is unprecedented for programming in a public library, at least by our usual stats. And we were the first public library in Missouri to host one. Though I do have to note that after me, we'll be hearing from the woman that actually brought it to the state. So you'll also note that at the very bottom there's a welcome to Drag Queen Storytime with SLPL link. You can go ahead and click that when this is published and watch a short little video about Drag Queen Storytime. I do have to say it's not all fun and without its issues. If we go to the next slide, you'll see there has been controversy like glitter. So, Drag Queen Storytime is the next step in the continuation of the relevance and the precedence and the prestige of drag in the LGBT community. If you go back through history, every time we've sort of stepped forward as a community at large, and then also as a community, sort of a smaller community of drag queens, we've always met resistance, right? So to the left, you'll see a wonderful, lovely post that circulated several conservative Facebook groups, claiming that we were scaring and confusing and perverting children. Now, I will say that little girl, I don't think she looks confused, but I'm going to go ahead and say that she does maybe look a little scared, and I would be too, let's be honest. We also had the very infamous, and it became nationally infamous, House Bill 2044, wherein a legislator introduced a House bill to create parental advisory boards in the state of Missouri, and that any public library that receives state funding that hosted a Drag Queen Storytime would be subject to losing all funding, and then the librarians that put it on being charged with a misdemeanor and thrown into jail for 1 year. So, I mean, who knew that being a librarian would so very often come with the threat of being thrown in jail? So it has been met with its controversy. And we did even have one protest. They were a bit late to the game. They came to the 6th one, but we absolutely did have about 10 or so people outside of our Schlafly branch in St. Louis City. And that was the first time we had a sort of active protest against a Drag Queen Storytime, and I believe against a program. So it's a very interesting and somewhat diametrically opposed dynamic, because you've got people that are either like super for it and they're like all about it. And then you have the other side and they're super against it, and they're going to let you know that they're against it, and they're going to try to draft legislation. They're going to use your image on Facebook and make you sort of the face of the demon of those perverted homosexuals. So all in all, that has been sort of my experience. You know, I myself am a drag queen. I've been doing drag for several years now. Don't let you think that I'm any good at it. I'm also very well integrated into my community. I'm the archivist for Pride St. Louis, our local Pride organization. I've been on the board of Growing American Youth, the second oldest LGBT youth organization in the country, for about 4 years, and I've been with them for 13. So again, being a drag queen fits in with all these other activistic and active ways of being integrated in my community. And actually, that's how I came to St. Louis Public Library, was by being a drag queen and sitting down and reading to kids, even though it's not just reading books. So that's my fourth of the presentation. Next up, I want to send it over to the woman who brought it to the state herself, Miss Sarah Riando of Webster University.
Thank you, Bill. Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Riando, Communications and Outreach Librarian at Webster University. Webster is a private institution located in the St. Louis suburb of Webster Groves. And we have about 11,000 full-time students, but most Webster students are graduate students who will never set foot on the home campus. They study online or at around 50 extended sites throughout the US. And these are returning adults working on business degrees, and they're likely to be in or retired from the military. Then there's the other Webster, kind of the original Webster that I experienced as an undergraduate. It's small, it's artsy, it's determined to march to its own beat. This is the kind of school where the chancellor knows a lot of the students by name. You see on the screen our mascot, the Gorlock, which has the paws of a swift-cheated, the face of a trusty St. Bernard, and the horns of a buffalo. And that pretty much sums up the atmosphere that we could not just have a run-of-the-mill mascot. We have a rich history of performance on campus at Webster, including the origin of the tradition of an annual college drag ball, which began with us in the 90s. I'm getting a question. Yes, there is a campus in Geneva, Switzerland, one of our 6 or 7 international campuses. And we have also have a prestigious music and theater conservatory. So performance and creativity are very important to our identity. Next slide, please. In early 2016, I was a part-time reference librarian at the beginning of my career, and I had seen online videos, like everyone else, from the BBC about drag story times at San Francisco Public Library and Brooklyn Public Library. And I got to thinking that if any college were to have such an event, it should be us, because of that history and that culture. Why should public librarians get to have all the fun? That's a thought that I often have. I asked my boss and got approval. No one really batted an eye. They were very excited. Most people just said, that's so Webster. I don't know if this was the first drag story time in an academic library. I was not aware of any, but there may very well have been others out there at this time. But it had definitely not been tried in St. Louis at that point. The difficult part of planning was having no idea what makes a good story time. I have no children. I have never worked in a public library. So I visited my local public library, St. Louis Public, to get advice from a children's librarian. And that was a really good choice because some of my original selections were comically bad. I had gone for books that I recognized, like those of Webster alumna Pat McKissack. And anyone familiar with children's books knows, why that's funny, because they're these very serious and very long books. So planning for a variety of age groups made it a little trickier to choose books because I had no idea who was coming. I wasn't certain if I should choose something like Brown Bear because older children might be bored by a book for preschoolers. But our friends at SLPL got me all sorted out. To recruit, I put out a call online. I also tried to visit local bars to see if anyone was interested and leave flyers. But really, all of our performers found us online. And most of them were alumni. Some of them found drag at Webster, and they were really enthusiastic about performing for us and being a part of an event and an organization where drag was such a positive thing. When the day came, we had about 30 people at the 2016 event. There were a few gender studies students or curious librarians that had come to check it out, and mostly it was members of the local community or staff that had brought their children, which was really our intent. Though we are private, we want to be warm and welcoming to the surrounding community. Our accrediting body requires us to do so, and that we are engaging with the city of Webster Groves and people that live in the greater St. Louis area. But for us to get that many attendees from the community on a weekend was kind of a big deal. The second year we had 60 people, about evenly dispersed with children and adults. We had 3 queens: Celeste Covington, Helena Handbag, whom we called Helena for the day, and Princess Calypso. I acted as MC and DJ, just kind of keeping things rolling. We read books about performing, fashion, and being yourself. And in between books, we had dance parties to G-rated drag classics. In between books to kind of get our wiggles out, and that part ended up being really popular. Overall, it was magical. We didn't have the same numbers that SLPL would get. And of course, they know how to throw a story time. But there's no measurable data to serve as evidence for the amount of fun we had that day. It was really special. We were very tired from dancing. It went on for over 2 hours. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, no one at the university objected. I recognized that I really had the privilege of being at such an institution that a lot of public universities or even private ones in different communities couldn't do. I'm not even sure that we were required to go above the library leadership to ask for permission to do this. I can't exactly remember how that went down. Being private, had that Missouri House bill passed, I'm not even certain that it would have affected us, and that was something that we kind of tried to prepare for, that in that event, private universities might need to shoulder that responsibility to have these events. Pardon me. You know, Webster was really unafraid of any backlash from this. You know, in another instance, not related to drag, but because we formed a witnessing whiteness cohort for faculty and staff, Breitbart has called us a liberal indoctrination camp. So I wouldn't really expect anything different from them than the greatest enthusiasm. A reporter from a local alternative newspaper was there, and that was another thing that we don't normally encounter. There's a university PR department that usually handles all of this. I never would have guessed that a reporter would have walked up to me. And the article that you see here was so incredibly positive. My favorite comment was that she said the kids were interacting with the queens as if they were Disney princesses, and that was really spot on. We didn't get any angry calls, nasty comments online. A local conservative talk radio personality did a short segment but it was more confused than condemning. But that was about it. Mainly, I think, because it was so new that I don't think the people would object had yet heard about it or saw it as a threat. You know, maybe they saw it as something that happens in San Francisco and New York. My biggest tip would be to listen. Listen to the performers for little things like having straws handy so they can get a drink without messing up their lipstick. Be sensitive to the fact that a lot of time and expense goes into drag performance. And while our performers were ecstatic to use drag as their means of giving back to their community, some performers just won't be able to do it without the tips that they rely on. Listen to your drag community when planning, because if you conflict with events like the drag pageants that Bill mentioned, it'll be very difficult to find performers. And listen to the folks that you would like to have attend. For us, this meant buying some cheap children's books because kids would have the expectation that they're going to take a book home from a library. And unless they were affiliated with the university, that might be a lot of paper. We had coloring sheets for kids that needed a break. One mother requested some big headphones for a kiddo that was a little overstimulated by the noise, which we were happy to provide. You know, now there's so much information online about how to put on a drag story time that I'm really curious to see how people will find new ways to do this in the coming years, especially as drag just kind of grows in the general pop culture consciousness. This doesn't seem to be a flash in the pan trend. They've been going on for like 5 years. And of course they're online now, but they're still going. And I can't wait to see how these change and remain exciting. We don't have firm plans to do another one in the near future, especially because our local public libraries are doing such a wonderful job with them. And the university administration has expressed a lot of interest though, so we are open to it. And I would like to see our story times grow to have more diversity of experiences and expressions in the future. In 2018, Bill, Celeste, and I were part of a panel at the Missouri Library Association conference on drag in Missouri libraries, and that was incredible and so much fun to see so many people from these little Missouri towns that had never seen or met a drag queen. And they might not have had that opportunity to do so otherwise. And one of the people in that crowd was Alora, who is going to take it from here.
Hello, so my name is Alora Bauer and I'm the Student Success Librarian at the University of Arkansas Fort Smith. I just want to start off by telling you a little bit more about UAFS. It's located in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is about an hour south of Fayetteville along the Oklahoma border. Arkansas is obviously a very conservative state, and Fort Smith is no different, although it might be more moderately conservative. UAFS is a smaller institution with an FTE of about 5,000 students. So how did we come to host a drag queen story time? As Sarah was saying, in October of 2018, I attended the Missouri Library Association conference because that's where I'm originally from, and I had only just started my job at UAFS. At the conference, I saw Bill and Sarah present and I was inspired. I immediately loved the idea of having a drag queen story time at an academic library because it felt like a novel idea, but also something that we should obviously be doing. When I returned to my institution, I pitched drag queen story time to my boss and she was on board right away. So the first thing that she did was run it by the administration, who gave their approval. We decided to have the event in December around finals so it could function as a stress relief event for our students. At that point, we reached out to a couple of different organizations who we felt might be interested in partnering with us on it, including Pride at UAFS, whose advisor is actually one of our librarians, and the River Valley Equality Center, which is a local LGBT advocacy group. I also personally reached out to Sarah asking for her advice, and she was a wonderful resource. She gave me title recommendations, told me about the format of their story times. It was incredibly helpful and comforting to know that I wasn't reinventing the wheel. It was something that had been done before and done successfully. In addition to Sarah, I contacted our local public library, and while they weren't official partners, several of their librarians volunteered to be a part of the event, and I honestly could not have done it without them. I've never run a story time, but of course they had, and so I relied heavily on their experience, particularly for the song or activity that we wanted to have between each book. So after establishing these partners, we needed to find a performer. Based on a recommendation from the River Valley Equality Center, we contacted Miss Chloe Jacobs. She's a drag queen from Little Rock, Arkansas, who is also the Miss Gay Arkansas America 2018. I think having someone with a title was really beneficial because she already had the platform and really felt empowered to speak for her community. And since it was our first event, it added a certain legitimacy to things. So luckily, Miss Chloe was available and willing to come to Fort Smith. She had another engagement in the Fayetteville area, so it worked out really well. We worked out the details, and I sent her a list of potential titles for the story time. I wanted her to really feel comfortable with the book she would be reading. This was not something she had done before, so I wanted to make myself available in case she wanted advice or needed practice beforehand. Next slide, please. So once we had our drag queen, we turned to marketing. We created this graphic that you see here, and Pride at UAFS agreed to get the word out around campus. You'll notice that we did market the storytime specifically to our students, but said that all ages were welcome. We have a decent population of non-traditional students who are parents, and so we really wanted them to feel comfortable bringing their children to the event because you don't always necessarily think of an academic library as a kid-friendly place. So the library then added the event to Facebook, and this was when we started getting pushback because it was now out there in the greater community. And while this pushback was expected, I don't think we were prepared to handle it due to a lack of experience with such events. There were obviously both positive and negative reactions, but it's always the negative voices that are going to be the loudest. We actually had an Arkansas state senator who saw our event and decided to write a post basically condemning it. In it, he apologized to the citizens of Arkansas for the ridiculous waste of taxpayer funds by UAFS for promoting this rubbish and said, UAFS will certainly be given an opportunity to explain themselves before our legislative committee soon. So this brought a lot of attention to our event, again, both good and bad. The university was soon receiving calls from community members and donors, and the administration really felt blindsided, it was definitely on us because we didn't make them aware of the potential response. As a result, the university chose to distance themselves from Drag Queen Storytime. The UFIS logo was removed from all the marketing, and the library had to answer lots of questions about what funds were being used. The university did not spend any money on the event. Pride at UAFS provided the refreshments, and the River Valley Equality Center offered an honorarium, although Ms. Chloe graciously performed without any sort of compensation. In the end, the senator deleted his original post and responded to the university's actions with a new post saying, I appreciate the University of Arkansas system for clarifying that they do not endorse or support this kind of event on their campus. Next slide, please. Despite all the controversy, the event itself did go off without a hitch, I would say. We asked the UPD to be there just as a precaution, but we didn't have any protesters show up. There were about 60 people in attendance. Ms. Chloe read 4 different books. Read A Crown Story, I Want My Hat Back, Penguin Problems, and The Incredible Book Eating Boy. So a mix of diverse titles and some fun storytime favorites. We had additional books ready, but we sort of based it on the attention of the crowd because there were children in attendance, as you can see, and on how many Miss Chloe wanted to read. Between each book, the public librarians led everyone in an activity to get the wiggles out. That included the hokey pokey, wiggle, 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 baby shark, and we ended with the parachute, which you can see in the lower left there. Afterwards, people were able to take pictures with Miss Chloe. We did have some local news there who talked to her. Everyone that I talked to was very grateful that we were able to put on the event. It's likely not something that the public library would even be able to do without even more backlash than we had. So for me, all those thank yous made all the stress surrounding it worth it. As far as the lessons that we learned from our drag queen story time, one, I would say adequately prepare your administration and have a plan in place for addressing negative responses. You need a consistent and united message and a person designated to deliver that message. Doing that legwork is also a really important part of gaining admin buy-in. Two, I would definitely recommend finding partners within the community, within the university and the community. It's such a great way to build relationships, and for us, those connections were vital, not only with finding our drag queen, but funding and running the event itself. So you never know what partnerships are going to provide. It could be anything from advice to donations, free marketing, co-hosting, whatever it is, but you really don't know unless you ask. And they are a necessity, I would say, and often lead to better attendance and a stronger performance overall. Lastly, I would encourage you to have a storytime workshop with your queen or queens. Miss Chloe did a great job, but I think that if she had been able to be in the space prior to the event, she would have felt more comfortable. Also, there is skill involved in reading a story, and how else to learn but to practice. So how to make read alouds interactive, how to transition from one activity to another, etc. So while we have not had another drag queen storytime event since this one, I'm very optimistic that we will in the near future. Due to other issues at UAFS, there's been a push towards addressing diversity on our campus. So a diversity committee was recently formed, and we're in the process of hiring an executive director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Definitely a step in the right direction, and it really gives me hope that we'll be able to repeat this in the future. So that is my story, and from here I will pass it off to Maria.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maria Atalano. I am the Student Outreach Librarian at the University of North Florida. So to give you a little bit of background, UNF is located in Jacksonville, Florida, which is in the Northeast. So we're basically South Georgia. And if you haven't noticed our theme already, all of our presenters are from Southern conservative states doing drag queen story time. So if we can plan these events, so can you. Our university has an FTE of about 17,000 students, including all levels, undergraduate, graduate, doctoral students. We also have an on-campus dedicated LGBT resource center. We were actually one of the first in Florida to have one. The library is often a partner with the center, and we've co-hosted events and helped cross-promote each other's activities and initiatives. So we've been a huge fan of all of what they do and vice versa. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful relationship. So far, we've hosted 2 in-person drag queen storytime events, and we hope to host a virtual one later this month. So in 2018, when Drag Queen Storytime was making headlines across the country, not always positive ones, our LGBT Resource Center Facebook page posted a link to a news story asking if students would be interested in attending one if we hosted one on campus. So more than 100 people liked, commented, shared, they were tagging their friends, they were tagging the library. So a member of the staff reached out to me and asked, hey, do you maybe want to partner on an event? And of course I said yes, I can never say no. But first we needed to write an extremely detailed proposal to cover everything from budget, security concerns, promotion, and also the academic benefits. So I did some research to see what academic libraries had done in the past to host Drag Queen Storytime. Why? What did it look like? How did you get buy-in? How did you make the partnerships work? How do you find somebody to read story in drag? And that's how I met Sarah. So I learned all about Webster's events. I got some suggestions, some ideas, and that's how I ended up writing my proposal. We also reached out to the official Drag Queen Story Hour organization. That's the headquarters is in New York. So like Bill said at the very beginning, most of the people who are doing the story times are public libraries. So I was actually on a phone call with this organizer going, no kids, no, this is going to be for college students. This is going to be an academic version of the Drag Queen Storytime. And he was very confused, but he gave some really great suggestions, including linking to the FAQ and how we could adapt that for our staff and our students who might have questions about why are we doing this, what are the benefits, and what do you do if somebody asks really hard questions about it, pointed questions. So this is how I found out that UNF was the first Drag Queen Story Time event to cater specifically to non-children. We were also the first to use a teaching faculty member to facilitate discussion and Q&A after the story time, which is how we decided to quote unquote make it academic. So we wanted to make sure that not only was the Drag Queen Story Time event covered by saying that yes, it's for college students, predominantly for the campus community, but it's got value as an academic pursuit because we've got classes on campus, we've got faculty who do research in LGBT and drag related subjects. This is why we're doing this event. So this is something that we also included in the marketing for the event. We marketed solely to UNF affiliates, but we are open to the public. We're a public library, public institution. So outside members of the community, if they show up, that's cool, but it wasn't part of our plan. As you can see in the picture, they showed up anyway. So our proposal had support from library administration and academic affairs, and it went all the way up the chain to the provost. So eventually it was all approved and we moved forward. In case you're interested in seeing this plan in our FAQ, I uploaded it to Google, so you can view it at that bit.ly link I've got on this slide. The speaker we chose, it was a local celebrity, BB Deluxe. She's a drag queen, trans activist, a writer, a musical artist, jack of all trades, Jill of all trades, I should say. She performed her own original stories for our event, which is pretty cool. Another sort of academic spin on it. Some of these stories included Trans People Don't Owe You a Gosh Darn Thing, and my personal favorite, The Mind Your Business Monster. But we did have some backlash, but also a lot of support. This mostly had to do with timing, in that our first event was scheduled for Pride Month, and there were other events that were happening around town, including the Jacksonville Public Library, who canceled one of their events, which was going to be a Pride prom, after complaints and pressure from a concerned mommy blogger. BB Deluxe was also scheduled to perform at the Pride Prom, so there was confusion about the two events. Some people thought that our event at UNF was a rescheduled version of the Pride Prom, so they started following our social media and bombing and calling us pedophiles and some really awful things. We also saw that people were trying to organize some protests on campus before the event, during the event. So we were pretty worried, and we were working with the UPD to schedule people to be on scene during the event just in case, and escape routes and cameras and all these different things. But I'm happy to say that we didn't have any actual protests or anything happen during the event. We had 65 attendees, including students, staff, faculty, the community members, their children. We did have some lovely displays of support, including this literal display that we had in our lobby with an interactive whiteboard. We had a wonderful write-up in the local paper with a headline that was Drag Queen Story Hour Prevails at UNF, which was really nice. And even though we didn't have anybody show up to make a scene, we did have 8 UPD officers on hand, and the police chief himself was keeping guard outside. So we felt that we had it all under control. And even with all the worry and the planning, it went so well, we decided to do it again a few months later. So we had a second event for Coming Out Week, which is a big deal on our campus. The LGBT Resource Center plans multiple events, several times a day, actually, for Coming Out Week. And we decided to not rewrite what worked so well before. So we brought back BB. We used our same plan as the first event. Why fix what isn't broken and already approved. We had UPD officers on hand again. We had even more support. This time we had 85 attendees, no children, and we had 2 professors show up with their entire classes. So it was wonderful. And I would say our success for these first 2 events definitely came down to the planning. So if you are thinking of writing a proposal for your library administration, your university administration, definitely write down every single little contingency you can think of. Look at the Drag Queen Story Hour organization FAQ and rework it. Use mine. You've got it now, and make it work for you. But also your partnership. So like Laura was saying before, working with the LGBT Resource Center was wonderful because we already had a built-in audience. They helped promote the event. They also paid the fee for our performer, which was wonderful. And it took so much pressure off of us. We are now currently planning a 3rd Storytime event, this time virtually via Zoom. So our main concern is preventing Zoom bombing. I'll let you know how it goes. But we're still going to rally support from our campus community once again. Fingers crossed everything goes well. So now that we've told you all about our individual Storytime events, I thought it would be fun to bring the experience to you. So please join me in welcoming Celeste for a quick story time.
Hello again, everyone. It's me, Bill, or Celeste. As these are unprecedented times, I thought I would do something that for myself was a little unprecedented, and that means that tonight I will be doing bearded drag, which I've never done before. And you all have seen so many different photos of my drag, so here's a new one for you. So very quickly today, we will be reading The Bad Seed, one of my favorite books by Jory John and illustrated by Pete Oswald. So, I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. Oh yeah, it's true. The other seeds look at me and they say, that seed is so bad. When they think I'm not listening, they mumble, there goes a bad seed. But I can hear them. I've got good hearing for a seed. Yeah, how bad am I? You really want to know? Well, I never put things back where they belong. I'm late to everything. I tell jokes, really, really long jokes with no punchlines. I never wash my hands or my feet. I lie about pointless stuff. I cut in line every time. I stare at everybody. I glare at everybody. And I finish everybody's sentences. And, of course, I never listen. And I do lots of other bad things, too. And you know why? Because I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. I just can't help it. Sure, I wasn't always this bad. I was born a humble seed on a simple sunflower in an unremarkable field. Had a big family, seeds everywhere. We found ways of having fun. We were close. But then the petals dropped and our flower drooped. It's kind of a blur. I remember a bag. And everything went dark. And then baseball, a giant. Even worse. I thought I was a goner. I thought I was done for. I screamed and I hollered, ah! But then, at the very last second, I was spit out. Choo! I flew through the air and I landed under the bleachers with a huge thud. When I woke up, it was dark outside. A wad of gum had softened my fall. Yeah, I felt okay, but something had changed within me. Something was not the same. I'd become a different seed entirely. I'd become a bad seed. A bad seed. That's right. I stopped smiling. Kept to myself. I drifted. I was a friend to nobody and bad to everybody. I was lost on purpose. I lived inside a soda can. And I didn't care. Oh, nope. Not a care in the world. And it suited me just fine. Until recently. I've made a big decision. I've decided I don't want to be a bad seed anymore. I'm ready to be happy. It's hard to be good when you're so used to being bad, but I'm trying. I'm taking it one day at a time. Sure, I still forget to listen, and I still show up late, and I still talk during movies. That one's actually true for me. And I do all kinds of other bad stuff. But I also say thank you, and I say please, and I smile, and I hold doors open for people. Well, not always, but most times, if they're close enough. And even though I still feel bad sometimes, I also feel kind of good. It's sort of a mix. But all I can do is keep trying and keep thinking, maybe I'm not such a bad seed after all. Hey, look, there goes that bad seed. Actually, he's not that bad anymore. I heard that. The end. So now I believe we head into our, welcome to my living room. I believe we head to our Q&A.
Yeah,
Thank you for all the comments.
That was amazing. You have a lot of love in the room right now, Bill, or Celeste, excuse me. So a couple questions that have come through, and feel free, everyone, to keep the questions coming in the chat. So this one could be for any of you, I think. So for story times directed at students, did students say anything about preference for formats they might like? Just wondering if children's books might not be of interest of some students, if there are other activities that were more engaging for them. And then a follow-up to that would be about students who may be interested in exploring drag themselves.
Anybody want to take that?
I can't really speak to the first one. This is Zero, by the way. I can't really speak to the first one because ours was really geared towards students. I could see so you would get gender studies and perhaps even students involved. For the MLA conference that Celeste and I were a part of and we attended, we did talk about, or maybe see something online about maybe everyone could try it out. And it also seemed like it had the potential to be sort of appropriative. You know, we like the idea of people dancing and, you know, participating that way, but feel confident enough to just at a conference session say, hey everyone, get your feather boa and show us your best work. But I also don't want to, I don't know, speak as someone who's not a member of the drag community.
Well, I think this was a great example of how like adults can enjoy a story time too, because a lot of those jokes are even tailored for us as well. So we didn't have any problem doing a story time for adults, but I would be interested in other ideas, of course.
I think part of the appeal was that who doesn't like to be read to, even if you are an adult? And I think fitting it into like your finals week activities for stress relief, or fitting it into June for LGBT month, it doesn't matter. It's your community who's there to listen and enjoy the story. It doesn't matter their age. They'll get different things out of it, even if it's just, you know, I just want to enjoy the performance of it.
All right, thank you both. A couple of questions for Maria. Will your Zoom event be more widely available since it is virtual and not in person?
I don't know. We haven't gotten to that planning stage yet. We are going to be doing it in Zoom, so it is probably going to be protected with the waiting room to make sure that people aren't coming in. We're playing with if we need to register ahead of time. We have LiveCal for Spring Share. We've done that with a couple other Zoom events where people register and then get the Zoom link. But I have no idea what it's going to look like. But we definitely are thinking about all these different contingencies just in case. Zoom terrifies me in that way because who knows who can show up and just start messing things up for everybody. But we're brave and we're going to try it and see how it goes.
And then a second question for you, Maria. What in-between activities are you considering for your virtual event?
We actually didn't have any in-between activities when we did them in person. So I don't know if we would plan to. I love the idea of like get your wiggles out and things like that in person as well as virtually. But we had to have time for stories at the beginning, and then we also planned for the Q&A and the more sort of like academic side of our event in person. So I just assumed it would take that same format virtually, but I don't know. This has opened up my mind to all the possibilities. I'll let you know.
All right, thanks, Maria. I think a question for anybody, besides students who are studying educational or gender studies, what other departments or colleges have benefited from Drag Queen Storytime?
Anyone that enjoys a good show. I mean, if you're looking for an academic spin to it, I mean, I think history comes into it, right? There's a lot of regionalism in drag. So I know you can't really see because I'm on a wee little screen, but I'm doing, my eye makeup is very much a St. Louis and Missouri regional palette and color. So, I mean, I would argue that there's benefit in other areas, you know, psychology, international politics, sociology, like all this plays into it.
Right.
The musical theater department, okay, well, maybe not the professionals. Maybe you don't want to invite like the professional students or anything like that. You know, we're just doing our best, but.
Our two faculty facilitators we've had so far were neither not education or kid related. So our first one was sociology, and Dr. Berenger teaches a lot of sexualities and sociology coursework, and that's what her research is in. And then for the second event, we had Dr. DeVillers from the English department who teaches LGBT, porn studies, and a bunch of drag performance and literature and film, really cool stuff. So I think you could put the spin on it in any discipline as long as you've got some faculty or researchers on campus who are doing really fun stuff. You could find any connections for our next event. We're hoping for an art professor. So anybody.
For your events, was there any information or resource table set up for attendees to get information or support on other things?
So for public library, yes. I mean, any opportunity to cross advertise your other programs is an opportunity to be taken. We did have information available on various subjects and various organizations, if I recall correctly, in addition to the activity tables. So, you know, something for the kids, something for mom and dad. So I think any opportunity to cross-advertise a program or to showcase organizations within your community, be they LGBT organizations or otherwise, I mean, I think that's an opportunity that should be taken.
For our 2 events, we had a sort of like a check-in table, and it was run by staff from the LGBT Resource Center. So they had their flyers, especially for Coming Out Week, so they could promote the other events that were going on around campus, but they also had a sign-up sheet for their email distribution list, LGBT wristbands, buttons, pens. So it was mainly about us saying, this is your event, and we're just hosting it, but you get the spotlight, and that's part of the relationship building and the community part of it for us.
Great, thank you. If anyone else has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. You know, we're here for a while, and then we will, as a reminder, be leaving the room open for an additional 20 minutes if everyone stays around to have some additional networking if you want, ask other questions. This has been great, everyone. Thank you for your awesome presentation and for the wonderful story time reading.
Thank you for letting me take off my eyelashes. I put on eyelashes for all of you. No, thank you as well.
Thank you very much.